Hello and welcome to today's Delta Credit Tip. So you go to work today and you discover from your employer that your paycheck is going to be a little short today because your income is being garnished. Turns out it's the Department of Education. How can you stop this from happening? What are your options? Stay tuned, we'll fill you in on today's Delta Credit Tip. Hello and welcome back to today's Delta Credit Tip. So today we're talking about your student loan garnishment. Turns out there's one more lesson that you needed to learn that the Department of Education decided to force upon you, and that is when you get behind on payments, they can take your money without your permission. All right? So what do you do? What are your options? Hopefully this information will be helpful to you. If so, don't forget, give us those thumbs up. Don't forget, subscribe and hit the bell so that every week as we come out with new information for you on your credit restoration process, you get it as soon as we deliver it, right? If you know there's a student out there struggling with student loans, share this information with them, right? The last thing you want is 15% of your paycheck going to the Department of Education without notice right before a holiday, right? Share this information so that we can empower ourselves and hopefully make a choice to make a change here with Delta. So we're talking about student loans, and this specifically is about government-backed student loans. If you're dealing with private student loans from Chase or Discover or Wells Fargo or whomever, all those apply with regular type debts like secured debts or unsecured debts or lines of credit. Now, however regular debts are handled, that's how those private loans are going to be handled. That's a different video for a different time. Today we're talking about government-backed student loans that you get for education and what options you have as far as stopping that garnishment from happening. And normally you're supposed to be notified within 15 days. But we are talking about the Department of Education, right? A lot of their information may not be up to speed because they have your last address, maybe where you went to school or something like that. So you may not get that notification. And they do not require a court date like any other kind of suitor, right? If you have a credit card company that you've defaulted on, or a car loan, or a mortgage, all those have court procedures that have to happen for a garnishment to take place. Right? There literally has to be a judgment first, then a garnishment. And if you watch some of our other videos, we also talk about how they can take money out of your account. Department of Education, any kind of government money, all those procedures don't come into play. All of a sudden you go to work one day or check your bank account and there's either money missing or part of your paycheck missing. But there are options, and today we're going to talk about them. But I am not a legal expert on what your legal rights are. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little field trip to one of our attorneys, Christie Arkovich, and she's going to help us learn about some of those options that we have on stopping that garnishment and renegotiating it out. So let's go on a field trip and find out some information about those student loans. And welcome back. So I'm here with my friend Christie Arkovich of Christie D. Arkovich PA here in Tampa Bay, Florida, who happens to be the author of the ebook, How to Take Your Life Back for student loans. And Christie, we need your help on this because we've got customers coming to us and they're saying, my employer just came to my office this morning saying you're going to have garnishments on your account, on your paycheck, and no court hearings, nothing like that. And it turns out it's the Department of Education. So as one of the attorneys that we use constantly for our customers, what advice do you have people who discover their income is now being garnished?
Sure, and we see this more and more now. Mm-hmm. The Department of Ed and their servicers, they're required to send a letter. Right. But a lot of times the addresses aren't updated or the letter gets lost. And so while you're supposed to receive a 15-day letter, a lot of times they don't get it. So the first time they're hearing about it is when the payroll department comes and says, hey, you know, got 2 or 3 days left, we're going to have to take some money out of your pay this month. Right. And most people, they live paycheck to paycheck, so that is devastating to them. Right. I don't recommend that you go to the hearing. You know, that you'll get a series of paperwork that says, you know, fill out this form and ask for a hearing. If If you go to the hearing, you almost certainly will lose. The Department of Ed has a pretty ironclad case.
Right.
The key is to maybe ask for the hearing to delay, use it as a placeholder, gain some time. You need time to figure out what to do, and then cure the default. We have this lovely little get out of jail card from Monopoly. Right. Basically, you can get out of a garnishment by curing your loan, and there's only 2 ways to do it, hence the 2 get out of jail cards: consolidation or rehab.
Okay.
The key is you can only do them each one time.
Right.
Rehab once in 10 years. You can only consolidate to direct loans once. So be limiting on how many times you try to cure a default like this.
Okay.
Because you're adding to the collection costs, you're running out of get out of jail cards, and eventually that garnishment will be a forever garnishment if you use all those options. But what we typically do when a client comes to us is we evaluate what their current income is, their marital status. We figure out which is best, rehab or consolidation. It's quite a bit of difference between them. We cure the default, and the garnishment goes away. And then we put them into usually an income-driven plan or some other mechanism to reduce the payment and get forgiveness at the end.
Okay, so these are government-backed loans, not private loans.
Yes, they're all government, and they don't have to go to court like you said. So there's no long runway that you have advantages of being sued by a process server, being able to file an answer, motions to extend time. None of that exists. It's just done by letter administratively. So no courts involved.
So let me ask you this: what is exactly a rehab of a loan?
Oh, sure. It's a rehabilitation of the existing loans. And so basically, you're negotiating with the debt collector. It's not the servicer, but it's actually a separate party, a debt collector. A lot of people have never heard of this debt collector before, so they're thinking, is this a scam? You know, I don't know these companies. So it's a little hard because folks don't realize who they're dealing with. There are scams out there. They don't know exactly who they should give their paperwork to because they're asking for tax returns.
Right.
You know, they're asking for personal information.
Right.
But what we do is we negotiate a rehab payment. It lasts 9 months. At the end of 9 months, then the loan is cured. It's good for the credit, which is good for your business because it helps them rebuild that. The old lates will stay on, but the default is removed. So usually for someone who's gonna buy a house in a couple years, we almost always will suggest do the rehab instead of the consolidation. It's better for your credit.
Now let me ask you this: if they're being garnished and they step into this rehab arena, is the garnishment going to stop during the rehab?
Not immediately. It stops 5 months in. So you make 5 payments under your rehab.
Right.
You can be garnished 10 paychecks. If you're paid every other week, 10 paychecks can go. So it's really important to reach out to someone who knows how to stop the garnishment before the garnishment order is entered, because otherwise you've got 10 paychecks that are going to be taken and you can't do anything about it in a rehab. So we try to get to them early. My assistant, my intake person, Sandra, she has certain guidelines that she follows to get appointments in, and when you've got an upcoming garnishment or an upcoming foreclosure sale, you get first priority.
Right. Okay, so that's the rehab route. Now, what about the consolidation route?
Okay.
How does that work?
We use consolidation for someone who wants to go fast. Remember how I mentioned rehab takes 9 months? Well, consolidation takes 45 days. So it's a lot quicker. Yeah. There are times we want to do that. It also changes your loan type. A lot of folks think consolidation is just to condense the loan types. You can actually consolidate one older loan into one newer loan. You don't have to have a pile of loans.
Okay.
Most people do have a pile of loans, and it simplifies things.
Because I was going to say, if you only have one loan, you really can't consolidate one loan.
You can if it was an older loan type, and it's sort of like a refinancing into a newer direct loan.
Okay.
And the direct loans are good for a few reasons. They're eligible for a 10% repayment program, which is the lowest percentage out there. They're the only loans that are eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Okay. And sometimes you have to change for a Parent Plus loan to be eligible for what we call ICR, which is another income contingent repayment. So direct loans have their purpose. They're since 2010, all federal loans have been direct loans. The government is choosing to loan directly to the student and get around the originator, the private party, to kind of reduce fees and things like that.
So that's what they mean by direct loans, is directly from the government to the student or the parent or whoever is borrowing the money. Okay. What other sort of issues are you seeing in the whole garnishment arena?
Well, in Florida, we're seeing healthcare workers having their license suspended when they're in default on a federal student loan.
Well, that's not good.
And again, they don't get a lot of notice. Sometimes they get no notice. All of a sudden they're called in, hey, can't come to work today because your license is suspended. And that is particularly devastating because while a garnishment's bad enough at 15% of your net pay, a license suspender means you can't work. It's 100% of your pay.
Right.
And so I once talked to the attorney on the other side when we were resolving one, and I asked for her personal opinion, what she thought of this. She couldn't go on the record, but she wasn't all that happy with it. I mean, how do you get a federal student loan paid back? You probably don't try to get the person fired. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. But in Florida, it's the only state that does that. And so healthcare workers need to be particularly conscientious about keeping their federal loans current and not in default.
And you're starting to see more and more of these
We
come
are.
up?
Yeah, we
Seriously?
are.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And there's extra fees. I mean, once it gets to the point where they're being garnished, they're hoping their employer will hold their job. We had one this year where our client, fortunately, she worked for a very understanding employer, and they held her job until she could get her license reinstated. But there's about, during that consolidation, there's about 3 months where that person couldn't work.
Wow.
And they couldn't take any outside work because they need to have that license. So they
Right.
just couldn't work unless they were doing some gig type thing. And there was also about $1,500 in administrative costs too. So
Wow.
it was more expensive to let it get that far.
Right.
So a lot of healthcare professionals have started to realize that this is a problem, but I still talk to folks every day and they don't even know that that law's on the books.
Wow. So I show up to work, I get the notification from my HR directive. What's the first thing I should do?
Well, I like folks to call me. I mean, I know you're doing a lot of student loan work as well.
Right.
But I think that a professional really needs to be involved when it's garnishment.
Right.
But if you just need to enroll in an income-driven plan, if you understand the differences on the plans, you can probably pick the best one for you. Please don't rely on your servicer to pick it for you. You need to know why you're in the one that you're in. But if you're faced with garnishment, see a professional because you need an advocate on your side. A couple reasons for that: speed. We know how and who to contact.
Right.
We hear from clients who just ran around in circles. You know, they're just being passed from department to department.
Department of Education,
Company.
yeah.
They don't really know what they're doing, and it's not, you know, it's not their job. They don't know what they're doing. I understand that, and also we can negotiate a lower payment during the rehab. You know, they'll start with a higher payment. The CFRs require a reasonable and affordable payment. So if our client can't afford what they propose, we explain why. We point to the CFRs and we get them to reduce the payment, and that's for 9 months, better part of a year. So usually our services pay for themselves just by getting the rehab payment lower than what it otherwise would have been.
So let's say this is not my first go around.
Okay.
Right? I was in a rehab.
Sure.
Didn't quite work it out the way it was
See
supposed
that.
to, right? Now they're garnishing my money.
Yep.
Don't have that rehab option. I guess consolidation is the only other alternative, but you know, what do you say to that person who's already screwed up a rehab?
Well, if they've successfully rehabbed in the last 10 years, you can't do another one.
Okay.
But if it was unsuccessful,
Right.
if they made 8 out of 9 payments, there wasn't a final agreement, any kind of problem, we can do it all over again.
Okay.
Once a garnishment order is entered, we typically can't do a consolidation. However, the guarantor, ECMC, will occasionally lift that. We have a higher level person there that we contact and we try to get them to temporarily lift the order because there are times that they get paid that way.
Right.
You know, so it's to their interest to lift it where the debt collector might not want to lift it.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we try to get it lifted. And if all else fails, you can always file bankruptcy and that will stop the garnishment order as well. Not necessarily to get rid of the student loan, but to get rid of the garnishment, give some time, get some reprieve, and then set it up for either the rehab, consolidation, income driven, whatever it is.
Okay, great.
And maybe an undue hardship claim at that point, if our client had already used the consolidation get out of jail card, same with the rehab, and they're forced into bankruptcy, if those income driven options aren't available for them, at that point maybe they would be eligible for an undue hardship. If the federal government wants an $800 payment and our client's making $20,000 a year, they don't have the option of a zero payment anymore if they've already explored those, use those get out of jail cards. So they might actually be set up for an undue hardship. We haven't yet had that case to bring that, but I wouldn't be surprised in the next year or so we don't do that.
Exactly. So if they need, this is still a hugely overwhelming amount of information, right? So if they need to reach out to you, right?
See this lovely book?
Yeah.
The NCLC, I just got this in the mail yesterday. They put out this 1,000-page book on how to deal with your student loans. They make the system complicated and they make it non-transparent, and whether it's on purpose or not, who knows, but it's not an easy area of law to understand. It shouldn't be that hard to pay a debt back.
Exactly. But if they do have questions, first off, to get your book, we'll try to put a link on that at the comment section below, so go ahead and click on that, and this has got some great information on how to take back your life from your student loans. And how do they reach out to Christie D. Arkovich, PA? What's the best way to reach out to you guys? If they need help?
Well, on our website, which is christiearkovich.com, and it's the last name doesn't have a T or a Z. It's Arkovich. You'll probably have it on your thing.
Exactly.
That's the best way. We have a contact form on there. It goes right to my intake person.
Okay.
There's a little summary. You can explain what your problem is, what your loans are, what you know about them. You don't need to know everything. That's our job.
Right.
And that will get us to a consultation, and we can get going from there.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this information was helpful and educational. And if you've got issues with those student loans, contact us, contact Christie Arkovich, PA, so that hopefully this information and the help that you can get will help you make a choice, make a change. Delta.